Hey guys, it's me, Roy Baleelan from Unique Photo, and today we have Jason Etzel from Sony, and here it is, you guys, the A1. We have the A7R Mark IV, we have the A9 Mark II. One can do 60 megapixels, 62 megapixels, right? And then another one could do 20 frames per second. And what I wished was, what if we had both? And here it is, you guys, the A1. It is the flagship camera over here. Thank you so much for bringing this in, Jason. I'm very excited to see it. I mean, just looking at it, there's a lot of things different about this camera in comparison to the A9 Mark II and the previous Sony camera bodies. There's a lot more customization I'm really excited for. So this is awesome, thank you.
It is. It's really the camera of dreams. And as Robbie has just mentioned, there have been times where we look at the Sony lineup and you see what the A9 was capable of, the focusing system, the speed, and the ultimate resolution that was coming off cameras like the A7R IV. And it's always been on a photographer's, wish list. Is it possible to combine these two? I mean, it's highly unlikely. And sure enough, Sony drops this new camera right in our laps. It is truly the flagship right now for all content creation. And that's why I'm also here at this point, because I want to make sure you don't run away with it, because I mean, this is something worth going like, to hell with our careers. We're taking this and running right now.
Exactly. The snow just happened after recording, and I am too sore to do any kind of running, so I think you're good here.
That's good. We don't have to worry about that.
But looking at this camera, I mean, this is a camera that could do 30 frames per second. It records in 50 megapixels, and I felt like the technology was there. It's just that being able to put all the processing in there and everything that this could do to be a flagship camera, the cost is going to be up there with like the rest of the other flagship cameras. This is a no compromise camera here. And
there is nothing really this camera is a little over a week old as we're recording this. Everyone has been analyzing the specs on it, its features. It's very hard to find something where I wish they had done this. I wish we had changed this. It's because it's not just a merger of the A9 technology and an A7R, like with resolution. This is expanded on it. The A9 was giving us 60 AFAE per second. That was something that was, Skynet, Star Wars technology. And here we came through with, let's just make it 120.
Double it. Yeah.
Let's just double it out. And let's maintain the zero blackout with the electronic shutter while we're doing it.
With the 50 megapixels, I think is the most insane part. So, and that just goes along with the kind of processing power. I mean, on the side here, we do have two, you could use CF Express A and SD cards. Well, if you're using the SD, they're probably both UHS 2s, but that will be bottlenecking the processing that it is going to be doing. So that's something to be aware of. But if you are getting a 6500 no compromise camera, you shouldn't compromise on your memory card either. I highly suggest getting the CF Express A.
It's for what this camera's got. I mean, it's not just the speed of where it is on the focusing system, which now has been up to 759 phase detection points, 425 contrast. It's the overall speed of what's under the hood here. It's the Bionz XR dual processors inside.
Right.
You can do a burst of 155 raw shots.
Oh man.
Which is kind of like, would I? And it used to be one of those things where you would max out your buffer, and the first instinct is, let me take the camera, let me look, let it, do its reading through. Now it's just a moment of like, I exceeded the buffer, let me look. It's already clear.
Exactly.
I can start shooting again. The fact that this camera is equipped with that 50 megapixel sensor, where it's capable now with the 8K 30p video capability on there, this thing can move data so fast, whether it be internal to a CF Express A card. You could still do also the 8K 30p even on a standard SD card, just something there, V60. It has the capability for this inside where this is truly a no compromise camera.
Absolutely. I think the really exciting thing about this, because obviously sports photographers, bird photographers are going to be able to use this camera, and using it, like I would see prints happen, and even on poster size, the resolution, if you get really close, it wasn't as sharp, but now that you're getting double that, seeing it a print poster size, like you could get a lot done, landscape and sports, but sports was the main one where when I got closer, it was a super grainy shot because it had to be expanded from 12 megapixels, but for like poster print, large prints, and really cropping too, it's a great add-on for sports. for that especially. So you could even crop even further for sports.
Well, it's one thing you just mentioned there with sports. A lot of times, you have sports shooters. We've all seen them on the sidelines. They have the 400-2.8. They have the 600 f4. They were already in there. For many of us, that might be a hard lens to walk around with.
Right.
So they always have that ability, and was very popular with like the A7R4 was you had a high resolution sensor, and especially for birders, you can crop in at any given moment for your prints. This is the same kind of thing now capable, but with A9, except better focusing speeds.
Yeah, exactly.
A crop down of 50 megapixels, you're still getting a 21 megapixel image in APS-C mode. And that's something where you're not worried about quickly putting on a teleconverter or losing a stop in the process. This now has those megapixels to play with, but with speeds that's about 2 times faster than the A9.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the decisive moment is totally up to us now.
It's going to be very hard to get a blurry picture, and at 30 frames per second, and with what we have in the read-write capability out of the buffer, this comes down to not so much space. It's like, hey, all these shots are good. They're in focus. I've got to now edit all these in focus shots and pick out which moment, because the focusing system is now that sophisticated. And we also added in there now aviary on the animal.
Oh, really?
So for the birders, you've got real-time AF tracking, and now you can just go right into the bird's eyes. This is why, for a lot of birding photographers out there, it's not just our pros and sports shooters. It's, hey, I can go in, I can track this bird through all of the branches coming down, and it's locked in on the eye at the whole time. That's one of those things where it pulled in from A9 specs. And also, while we're talking about some of the R features, this also now includes pixel shift as well, which was exclusive to the R3 and the R4 previously.
That's awesome. So in terms of, you could probably do the 16-shot focus stacking as well.
Oh, indeed you can.
Yeah, so how many megapixels is that after maybe?
You're starting to look in, if you're doing the basic, about 199.
Yeah.
But we could still kick it up on there. That's why this is really the non-compromising camera.
Dang.
You're getting resolution, you're also getting the speed. And it's coming with all these additional features that you never even knew you wanted coming through. And the perk is, because we mentioned as far as birding and sports, this also has the same electronic viewfinder that we introduced on the A7S3. So that's 9.44 million pixels on
That's
there.
right.
It is going to be sharp, and with no blackout, it's just at 30 frames per second. So you probably just burned through about 140 shots right there.
You guys, this is my first time playing with the camera, and it is like an optical viewfinder. So this is insane. The refresh rate and the tracking. I still have the original A7S. I am planning to get the A7S Mark III as an upgrade, but that was a 2.3 million OVF.
It was an adequate EVF, because I'd say adequate because now we know what we're capable of.
Exactly.
Robbie and I find ourselves having needs now based on new specs.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there's so much going on in this camera. I'm worried that we could be even able to cover everything, because even just looking at the camera, there's a lot of new differences in comparison to the A9, Mark II, and all the other previous cameras. Can you tell us anything else that we could be looking forward to, or what to expect from the changes? I could see an angled
You're
shutter
going to
speed
see the
here.
angled shutter, which is inheriting, because you have to keep in mind that this is now our flagship camera. This is having improvements on what was maybe our previous high end, which was the A9 Mark II. Hence we discussed 120 AF AE per second coming through, better real-time tracking and all this. A lot of development went in, and what we see on the A1, we're this is groundbreaking technology. Some of it is the guts inside there, which Robbie and I could probably and will most likely be going on about it. But when you look at the ergonomics, it's also the body design that we've improved that will maybe now also pass through the line. Because if you're familiar with the A9 Mark II or even the Mark I, the locking mechanisms on our second dial, they're much more ergonomic now. They're for quick access coming through. Even the touch points for the buttons, they're softer coming in there as well. And it's more of the tech as well, but this has the touch screen menu that we introduced on the A7S3.
Exactly. Yeah, so the A7S Mark III is also carried here from the menu. And over here, I'll give you guys a look in a second, but there are some switches over here that is the AFS. You could choose autofocus single, C, autofocus continuous, digital manual focus, and manual focus over here. And then right above it is your driver mode. So you are able to choose between it right on the fly and not hitting the function button anymore, because they know you guys have heard, you've seen how much we use the FN button to get to these most important ones for us. So
it's like
really
we
great.
listen. Maybe that's how the cameras get made. We listen.
There you go. I mean, and honestly, yeah, and everything that, all the cameras, like all the alpha models that you've been making, is just become an accumulation of this, and it's a super exciting camera.
Well, I mean, for what it is, even in your hand right now, you kind of feel what's there with like the heat dissipation design in the body. It's giving a real solid feel across the board. But it's also some things that we've, like, nothing is too big or too small for Sony to acknowledge and put into future cameras. If you look at some of our more popular cameras like the A7 Mark III, you look right now at where you are for the memory card port, there's now a lock in there. So there's no more accidental, like, here comes the door, open to it. There's a lock in there. Also, with the development of the CF Express A cards, we wanted to maintain 2 card slots in our cameras, but we also wanted to go up with the latest capability for read-write speeds. So we're not even penalizing anyone, like, hey, you don't want a CF Express A card? Your SD cards can still go here. They can even still work with the 8K 30p.
Exactly. And yeah, for video, that's so crazy. The 8K video that this camera is capable of doing of 4K 120p,
All on.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious about 1080p, right? Can it do 240p as well, or even higher? Or
We could probably be pushing on that, but there's one thing I think that should be getting more press out there for the video. And being this is like an unboxing video, it's the first time in your hands here, let's just put it up there. If we can get a graphic, S-Cinetone.
Just put
Having
it right
this in an
over
alpha
here.
camera, just, you know, the more you know, S-Cinetone.
S-Cinetone.
Being in there, that, and for those who aren't familiar with, you know, this kind of video capability, this is the first time it's really in an alpha camera. This is something that's being derivative from like our Venice series, which is one of the top of the line cinema cameras on the market right now. It found its way into the A1 as well.
Wow.
I mean, that's why this is really the no compromise flagship. This is going to be ideal for both still shooters, video, content creators. And you know what, if we probably could do it if we really want to. One of the things that really fascinates me, I have a background in strobes, the ability now to flash sync at 400th of a second.
Right.
In electronic shutter.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. 1/400th of a second shutter. And then, so you could go full power even longer. And then even if you do high speed sync, you're losing less power just by going into those higher sync speeds. So
it's something to play with, because part of what we did there in the mechanical shutter up to 400th of a second.
Right.
And that used to be like, hey, that's unheard of speed across the board. But for anyone who worked with strobes or any kind of off-camera flashes, electronic shutter was like, well, that's where it's not going to work. Sony put into this newly designed shutter system here. It has the system here. It can still sync at 200th of a second in electronic shutter. And if you crop down to APS-C mode, you can even go a little bit faster on that. So for people who are using strobes, and that's your wedding shooters, and that's also your sports shooters in arenas that have strobes in the rafters, you can now have this kind of tracking, that 30 frames per second, all in silent shutter mode at 50 megapixels.
Oh my God.
And as I was mentioning there, 155 in a compressed RAW. At 30 frames per second. That's what really got me excited, is at 30 frames per second, you're not losing anything. You have the same functionality at 1 frame per second and 30 frames per second, regardless of the shutter you're using.
Yeah. So this is a big upgrade for anyone. Like, this is a one and done kind of camera. If you are the type of photographer that likes that shoots like weddings, portraits, sports, anything really, even recording, like looking at the 8K footage, I felt like I saw the sample videos and I thought I was in Japan watching that sample video. Just like, it was so much detail that it was being retained in it, and it was pretty amazing stuff. I think one of the things that videographers might be confused about, but I think is a great addition to the A1, and the decision to go with this kind of screen over here instead of the variable rotating thing. I think I would be more worried about this getting broken off with the A1. So, I mean, this design is more rugged, and honestly, if you're recording in 8K or anything like a crazy production, I would probably have a monitor anyways into that setup.
It's for what it could be, because right now with all the peripheral capabilities that are with this camera, and we'll get into that in just a moment, but in regards to the screen as well, even on the S3, a lot of the touch points were meant to be constantly used. If you're a videographer, a content creator, you're going to be moving this around a lot, very solid. And that could even be said for all the ports on the side. But as Robbie was just mentioning, if I'm out shooting content, I like to see exactly where my lens is aligned That's what you have with the pan tilt screen on the A1. It would be right there lining up with the lens, and odds are I have some kind of exterior stuff plugged into the camera, whether it be a monitor, other audio inputs, what have you. That can't really happen as easily with the screen tilted up this way. So I view it as a benefit, but there's all kinds of different ways that people will create their content. And that's why having the ability to connect 5 gigahertz and 5G as far as Wi-Fi capabilities, this can easily be beamed off to another monitor. And in some cases, this also enables live streaming capabilities as well.
That's
if you're using
awesome.
something like an Xperia Pro. Because even give it this is like your unboxing, check out some of the ports there. You'll feel a good quality of the door.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's the new USB 3.2 on there that has power delivery, so infinite shooting capabilities. That's something where if you're doing a lot of broadcasting, and of course, here we are with our masks on, but if you're doing a lot of things via webcam, one thing you always don't want to worry about is what's the power going on your camera? Well, constant power delivery through that USB.
Right.
And you'll also note there's an Ethernet port on there.
That's right.
I mean, that starts opening up okay, let's transfer at 10 gigabytes. Why not? Just have it go in that way.
That's insane. Yeah.
But pairing it out with some of our devices, and you're seeing a lot of Sony now on TV and sporting and live events. A lot of it is possible because what they can do, just offloading, how fast the data can get through in the buffer, right to card, and broadcast out. That's why these are becoming the no compromise beasts for both stills and for video.
I think with the Xperia Pro, that's a 5G camera. So you could transmit, like that kind of transfer speed you could get from that is going to be insane, especially if you're doing shoots or like if you're doing runway shoots in a New York Fashion Week or like any kind of like gala opening or anything like that where there's a red carpet, then if you need to get those pictures out right away, that's a great accessory that you could have onto there, a great feature that you could put onto the A1.
It's something that's been working with the pros, and ever since the A9 too, there was all this, don't have the professional go into the press tent to offload, let it all be done here in a moment's notice. But as Robbie just mentioned, pairing that with an Xperia Pro, you're getting that capability to offload or offload live, but also that's a 4K OLED display.
Yeah.
Which is just, who cares about an articulating screen at that point if you have a 4K OLED display?
Yeah, exactly.
That's something that's going to pair with, and that also will go with even a full HDMI size in there. And we mentioned the power delivery. If you're using the Xperia Pro, that's going to take power from the power plugged into your camera, so you don't have to worry about losing your power source on the camera or the phone.
That's awesome. Is there, we went through a lot, but is there anything that we've missed so far in terms of talking about what the A1 could do? Because Matt, we talked about the 50 megapixels, 30 frames per second, like we got that electronic shutter for strobes.
We've got a new shutter in there.
We got video.
So that's going to help out, especially with the refresh coming through there. That's going to do a lot as far as, any rolling shutter effects in there with the sensor as well. That's why something right now for sports, you're not going to get anything in there. And more importantly, one of the things that there's always been a caveat, a reason someone's like, mirrorless, I'm not too sure on. The biggest one has probably been banding. But now, from what we've been able to put in here, you can actually customize out your shutter speed and electronic shutter to decimal points to match out with the lighting sources you've got coming in. So if you're shooting in an area with a lot of LED lights, display boards in arenas and what have you, real time, you're seeing everything in a mirrorless camera. What your sensor sees is your viewfinder, your screen. You just go right to the speed. That's going to cancel out banding. So in many ways, this is going to help out with professional shooters who are shooting sports who've had to fight banding but maintain a silent shutter. So golf, tennis, and in some cases, concerts, events. They might happen again sometime. We don't know.
Hopefully.
But the camera has the technology in there because we've listened to the feedback and the needs of everyone out there. That's why, as we're sitting here going through things, I'm like, there's nothing I could really change on this camera. They're not missing much in there. I still have 4K capabilities on here. I have an ISO range going up to 102,000 on here. It's, I'm kind of like, if I don't come up with something for them to improve on, will we settle? This is kind of proof that Sony is not settling on development. We keep pushing the envelope further. And if I had to dream of a flagship camera, I'm looking at it.
This is it.
It's right here.
Absolutely. So if you're a photographer, any type of photographer, it's hitting the mark on so many types. So thank you so much for showing us the Sony A1. We are super excited to have it here in our display. I'm excited to take it from display and get to try it out eventually one of these days. But thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate it.
It is my pleasure on that. And these will be available at Unique Photo. You can pre-order yours today. and they will hopefully be getting into all of your hands around early March. So it's one of
Sounds
those
good.
that call up Unique, drop Robbie's name. If need be, take the one out of Robbie's hands. I might in about 30 seconds. But it's really the one and all camera, and stay tuned with everything on Unique Photo social media. We'll probably be having some events regarding the A1, some touch
Absolutely.
and feels and all. It's really the camera that this is the new benchmark.
Sounds good, guys. And stay tuned for the future posts. And thank you again, Jason.
It is my pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys later.
Wait, get back here. Come on.
I'm just gonna...
Get him. Tackle him. He's got my camera.